Howdy everybody, Mr. Bob, your neighborhood naturalist. I'm Bob Langston from the North Carolina Zoo, and I'm glad you're going to let me spend a little time with you today. Thank you very kindly. Now, I realize we have kind of an odd camera angle. There's a reason. I'm going to make a point here in just a moment or two. There's actually a secondary reason too. We've had so much rain here in central North Carolina. I just thought it would be a great opportunity to look up there and see that beautiful blue sky. That's part of nature too. So today, I want to mention this big oak tree up behind me. It is right now mid-February, and because of that, we're right, I won't call it the dead of winter, but we're pretty close to it. Anyhow, especially when you look at the weather forecast that's coming up for the next few days, we could be getting some winter mix. So let's talk a little bit about trees. We've talked a little about animals, and some of you have done some work and you know how various animals handle colder temperatures. Endotherms, or warm-blooded animals, can either stay really active, like birds we talked about last time. Some of them can go into hibernation, like the groundhog that lives over in my neighbor's yard. Others, like reptiles that are ectotherms, will do a lot of different things. Some of them can find places to hide where it's nice and warm. There are some that can literally freeze and thaw themselves out. Alligators, as an example, slow way down. And trees do some of that similar stuff. So the oak tree that you see behind me has no leaves on it. It kind of goes into shutdown mode. Basically, what happens is all up and down the stem, the part of the tree that transfers water makes the assumption that A, the water is going to be frozen because of the cold temperatures, and that it may not get an opportunity to replenish itself, and also that if it had all the leaves, it would lose a lot of water. Now, the leaves are interesting. They are typically green in the summer, and there is a pigment, a chemical, that actually helps that happen, and we call it chlorophyll. Now, chlorophyll shows up as a green pigment, and that's because it doesn't absorb any of the green light, it reflects it. So green light waves will actually hit a leaf and they'll bounce off. You and I see it as green until the fall. And as the water starts to go down the trunk of the tree and there's less transpiration, one of the cool things that happens is the chlorophyll starts to die out and the other pigments start to show up. Some of them can be yellow, some of them can be red, some of them can almost be purple. So that's one of those things. Now, chlorophyll is not just a pigment. It actually is a chemical that when the sunlight hits it, it helps process nutrients and carbon dioxide to produce food to help the tree grow. Now, it's a naturally occurring substance. It's made out of, hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and magnesium. Now, those two last items, nitrogen and magnesium, are things we always need to add in fertilizers or in nutrients. It can happen through compost if you grind up your leaves. So those are a couple of those things. Now, if you stand at this angle for too terribly long, you're going to go crazy. So let's just wrap our brains around something really fast. That tree, that big white oak tree that's up in my backyard, is what we call deciduous. It's seasonal. It does its best spring through autumn. It's green, it grows, it replenishes itself, and it reproduces. That's what acorns are, as seeds. Not all trees do that. Some trees stay green year-round. This one right here on my left is what we call an evergreen. So let's take a look at some evergreens. Now, I got to warn you, I have trees in my yard that are natives. I have trees in my yards that are not natives. I have some bushes up in the back that are evergreen, but they're what we would actually call an alien invasive. So we're going to take a little walk. We'll point out a couple of things, and I'll get you off of this crazy angle we have here, okay? Come on, let's go see. Now, we've talked about this guy before. This little tree that's right here in the yard, this is one of our native red cedars. And even though it doesn't look super duper red, I'll explain why that is in a moment or two, it's still growing. And evergreens typically live in harsher conditions and temperatures. And that means that in the wintertime, they still want to have some chlorophyll going so that they can actually continue to grow. Now, even though they might be evergreen, they do occasionally lose some of their leaves. And they have some kind of odd looking leaves. I'll show you what they look like here. Let me reach out and grab one. I talked about these guys back in the summer, so let's see if we can't make this look. They have these leaves that look kind of, let's see, I just dropped that one. Let's try and get another one here. Sorry about that. Anyway, so their leaves are on these stalks, and they're actually kind of shaped like scales. And one of the reasons why these trees don't dry out too much in the wintertime is because the leaves are very tough, harsh, and waxy. It means that not a lot of animals want to eat them, number one, and it also means that they have the ability to close off some of their stomas, their openings where they transpire through with water and various things. They close those so they don't typically go away. They're not the only tree that does this, but you'll see that it's characteristic of a lot of evergreens. The leaves themselves, the reason they get tough is because they have a lot of cellulose in them. Cellulose is wood. It's actually a series of sugars that are put together in a non-water soluble fashion. Now, if you look over here behind this particular tree, over here, there's an evergreen. Over here, there's an evergreen. I'll tell you a little bit about those in a second. But red cedars, eastern red cedars, this guy right here, this little tree we're going to wave at you, these guys are natives, and they are found throughout the southeast. Most of the ones we're going to talk about from here are not natives, and they are not found necessarily here in the southeast except as decorative or landscape plants. That's kind of why I have them. Come on, let's take another little walk. We're over here by this little guy right here, and this one's about 6 feet tall. It's about 5 years old, and this one is what's called an Arizona cypress. And these are native to the United States. They're not native to the southeastern United States. And the leaves on these look a little bit similar to what we found on the red cedars. They're not the needles, they're scales that grow along a stem. And if you look at this one, it's hard to believe these are actually leaves, but this is one stem off the tip of this Arizona cypress. One of the reasons I planted this one here is largely because they're extremely hardy and they're really drought tolerant. And this crazy thing, I have 4 of them back here. This one can pretty much grow on a rock as long as it gets established. So these guys, again, they're used for landscape plants all over the place, and you'll find them up here. All right, here's another example of one of these sort of non-natives. They're not invasives, but non-native trees that I have here in the backyard. And I'm going to show you what the leaves of this one look like up close. They're much more spiky. They don't widen out. They're not big and flat like a lot of the deciduous trees would be. But these guys have chlorophyll in them this time of year, and they're actually trying to get a little bit of extra growth. And this is a Norway spruce. I work with a group here in town, and we used to give these away as part of the Christmas on Sunset celebration. This one is about 4 years old, and it's not quite 3 feet tall. They're slow-growing trees. So about that growth, hold on a second. I'm going to reach down here and grab one of my props. Many of you have seen these. This is a typical board. It's wood, and these represent the various growth rings. I did have a slice of a tree. We call those cookies, but unfortunately the rings didn't stand out, and I wanted to show you what those do. The lighter colored ones, typically these go by rainy and dry seasons and growth seasons. So typically in this particular one, the wide white rings, the lighter colored rings, those are going to be the summer seasons when there's a lot of rain and when these guys have a lot of leaves and they can grow quickly. The darker rings, that's wintertime. They grow closer together, so they typically tend to be darker and look more dense. And that's how these trees grow. They can continue to photosynthesize in the wintertime. They have the chlorophyll. They can do that as long as there's water, and heaven knows we've had enough water lately. So this is just one of those guys, a Norway spruce tree. Now I'll show you a couple of more, and I'll tell you a little bit about their history. And I want to show you a little odd thing that some of these trees do this time of year. Hold on. Alrighty, well, we've been back here before. My bird feeders are in this little clump of trees right here, and I'm going to try and pan around a little bit. This one, if you can see it, it's not very green right now. In fact, it's kind of brown. It's not dying. That this particular tree, and we'll get up close and personal with it here in a moment, this particular tree does a thing that's known as winter bronzing. And it means this time of the year, late in the winter, the chlorophyll is actually starting to lose its effectiveness. It is starting to fade out and starting to die a little bit. And it's mostly because this is a North American tree that's native to Canada and the northeastern United States. One of the great things about this is where it normally grows, the plant itself believes this time of year that the water it would be using to nourish itself is actually frozen in ice. So the tree carries on as long as it can, and when it gets late in the winter time, quite often it goes into a shutdown mode and slows its growth down. And that means that it has less water and that the chlorophyll starts to fade out a little bit, and some of those other pigments that are found inside the tree start to gain dominance. And I'll show you a little bit more closely here in just a moment what this tree looks like and tell you a little bit more about it. So hang on. Okay. So here we are, we're back around, and I have this row of trees. When I planted these things, they were about the size of my finger, and these are about 10 years old. They range in height from about 7 feet to up to 10 feet. And these are what are known as Arborvitae trees. If you translate that, it literally means tree of life. And Arborvitae trees are, they're known as Thuja occidentalis. Sometimes they're called northern white spruce. A lot of different local names and colloquial names. They do that bronzing that I was talking about, and I'll show you these are the leaves. They have these flat clusters. I'll try and hold my hand behind it here so you can actually get a better look. They have these flat clusters and stuff, and they are the very scale-like leaves that you get, but they are starting to bronze a little bit. If you get inside the tree itself, I don't know if you can see this or not, but the ones that are inside the tree, away from the wind, these are still real green. So Arborvitae trees, white cedar trees, these are used often as landscape and hedge plants. Typically, they're more of a northern plant, so in their mind, it's really late. I don't know if this is a photo period thing or if it's just a temperature thing. So the tree believes it's getting to be close to winter time. All of its water is going to be frozen, so it tends to bronze up. They'll green up again as soon as the spring comes around. We start getting longer days. We also start getting less cold temperatures at night. So sometimes evergreens are not always green. They can be bronze, like our buddy here. We can have natives, we can have non-natives. The natives, by the way, the cedar trees do this same bronzing, and they do it for the same reason. Just it's one of the ways they deal with the colder temperatures. They do tend to grow typically year-round. So that's just a couple of things about some of these evergreen trees. They're very common in neighborhoods. They're used for landscape plants. Some are hybrids. Some have been designed, we call them cultivars. They're cultivated specifically for landscape use. So that's one of those things. It's a nature, but it's backyard nature. So anyhow, so I'm Mr. Bob, and did want to mention this, that this will be our last regularly scheduled Neighborhood Naturalist program that I will be popping up here and there. But with luck, we're keeping our fingers crossed that with vaccines and other things, the North Carolina Zoo is going to soon be able to move into a much more accessible period of operation in conjunction with the COVID-19 virus and ailment. So at the present, we're still following all of the state and governor's protocols, and that means we have to limit the number of people who are in the park at any given time. So you do still need to make a reservation. You do still need to buy your tickets in advance. We invite you to come and visit with us. The weather will be warming up. We won't have all of this rain for as far as we can see. It won't be here forever. So we'll kind of keep going with that. We'll keep our fingers crossed and see how that happens. If you want to find out all about cool things that are happening at the zoo, you can visit our website. It's www.nczoo.org. Now, one of the things I will mention is coming up on the 27th of February is a day that we refer to as International Polar Bear Day. It's a day where all of us who work with education, who work with animals, go out and we try and help promote the awareness of polar bears and their challenges as they face their life up in the Arctic. So we'll talk about things. I believe we have some special events planned around the zoo. So if you can go ahead and get your reservations. You can go ahead and purchase your tickets in advance. Make yourself a time to come into the park, an appointment for entry, and you can come and see all kinds of other cool things. We'll be doing some live broadcasts that day as well. So hopefully you'll get a chance to join us for some of those. Hopefully, before too much longer, you'll be able to come and visit the zoo under our normal operating hours. Once we get into April, we will be going back to our 9 to 5 days. But again, visit our website at www.nczoo.org. You can find out all that information. So for the North Carolina Zoo, I'm Mr. Bob. I am your neighborhood naturalist. I'm Bob Langston. I want to extend the invitation to you to take advantage of the wonderful weather we have today. May not be that way tomorrow. So when you get a great day, get outside, enjoy nature, get curious, and take care of yourselves. We'll talk to you whenever we can. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves. All right? Bye now.